of LA Times today. The current generation of college students are among the brightest, most inclusive, and civically engaged in decades. But they are also the loneliest. USC's Dean of Religious Life, Arun Soni, says our young people are better at communicating with their thumbs than with their tongues. And many don't have a sense of belonging. Dr. Soni tells us why and what we can do about it. Thanks for being with us, Dr. Soni. Describe the difference between when you started and where you are now, what you used to hear from the kids, and in just a few short years, what you're hearing from them now.
So as Dean of Religious Life, I'm essentially the university's chaplain. And when I got to USC in 2008, I saw the shadow and light that animates a normal college experience for students that came to see me. But mostly they talked about their hopes and dreams. How do I live an extraordinary life? What does it mean to be human? What matters to me? Why does it matter to me? They were really inspired to take their education out in the world, to transform the world, to transform themselves. About 5 years ago, I started to see a sort of devastating downward trend in these conversations. Instead of asking me, how should I live? Students started asking me, why should I live? Instead of talking about hopes and dreams, they were talking about hopelessness and meaninglessness. And I noticed that it sort of correlated with millennials leaving college and post-millennials, the next generation, Generation Z, coming into college. It was almost like a generational shift happening in real time. At first, I thought maybe I'm just seeing different students. Maybe some students who didn't know I was here are finding their way to my office. But when I talked to my colleagues around the country, I realized this is a national trend, and it's getting worse every year. It's not just what we see, it's what the data tells us too.
What's going on?
Well, we know right now that 60% of our students across the country are suffering from overwhelming levels of anxiety. We know that about 1/3 are wrestling with some kind of mental health issue, and more than 10% are struggling with thoughts of suicide. Those numbers seem to be getting worse every year. And I have some ideas as to what is happening, but what I believe is it's not just stress, anxiety, and depression, it's loneliness. Our students are really, really lonely. I never got the question in the first 5 years at USC that I get almost every day, which is how do I make friends? And Generation Z is the first digitally native generation. They are a generation that was raised on social media. They have compared their real lives to the curated, idealized lives of others throughout their lives. And so I think because of that, they don't have as much experience talking like we're talking now. They don't have interpersonal sort of community formation opportunities. Instead, they think everyone's figured it out but them. They have an imposter syndrome. I don't belong here, but everyone else does. Everyone else has got the life that I should have. And I think that's had a negative impact on their spiritual and mental health.
And I know there have been studies that prove that interaction on this thing does not release the same brain chemicals that interaction with another human.
It's true. We call it social media, but in some ways it's antisocial because you're sitting by yourself on your phone. High school students don't go out as much as they used to. They don't drive as much as they used to. They don't date as much as they used to. Why? Because they're sitting at home texting each other in a way that precludes them from developing the kind of real-life resiliency skills that will serve them well in college.
So as a parent of a teen, what do you do?
Well, you have to emphasize relationships. There's nothing more important than deep, loving relationships in our lives, enduring relationships. I always tell my students, it doesn't matter how many friends you have online. Do you have 3 friends on campus who have your back? 3 friends who know you? 3 friends who will be there for you no matter what? I think that's a good place to start. The second thing is to challenge your students, your kids, to think about meaning and purpose in their life. It used to be that you go to college to figure out who you are. Now you go to college to get the job. And at the same time, probably 50% of our first-year students will not be affiliated with religion. So meaning, purpose, community, joy, gratitude, service, the things that they might have traditionally gotten from religion, they're not getting it from religion anymore. So how do you rebuild this structure where students can think about what makes them human, about who they are, about what is their role in this life? Asking the big questions, even if you don't know the big answers, I think is an important first step.
Like what?
Who am I? What does my life mean? What matters to me? Why does it matter to me? How do I cultivate joy? How do I live an extraordinary life?
And as a parent, do you start that conversation, spark that conversation with your child to help them wrap their arms around it?
I try. I mean, I have a 5-year-old daughter, so I probably learn more from her at this point than she's learning from me. But I have noticed that at a much younger age, our schools are doing a better job, at least with mindfulness, emotional regulation, community building, play, the things that I now try to bring to my college students. I steal a lot of ideas for my college students from my kids' preschool. We have coloring book sessions. College students love to color. We have drum circles. My kid goes to a drum circle. We do meditation. My preschooler does meditation. So in some ways, we're revisiting sort of social skill acquisition at a much later age. I think this is the most difficult and most important issue in higher education right now, the mental health of our students.
Dr. Soni, thank you so much.
Thank you so
really
much for being
important
here.
Conversation.
Appreciate it.